Hello, I'm Dr. Grudnikoff. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in New York, and I wanted to make a quick post to address a question that I hear very frequently from parents and patients, and it has to do with black box warning on antidepressants and a number of other medications that warns about increased risk of suicidal thoughts and behaviors. So I'll just give a general overview of what that actually means, what the studies show, and what it means clinically. What does that mean for us and for our patients? So since about 2004, FDA, the regulatory agency in the United States, required that antidepressants and a number of other medications used for depression, such as antipsychotics, atomoxetine, and a few other ones, that all of them include a warning about about a risk, a small risk of an increase in suicidal thoughts and behaviors in children, adolescents, and also even young adults up to the age of 25 or so. And that this may be particularly relevant at the start of treatment or dose changes. So this came from combining a number of short-term studies of medications where antidepressants were compared to placebo. So when they pooled the results of, I think 24 studies or so, they found that in the placebo group, about 2% of kids had suicidal thoughts and behaviors. In the medication group, 4% had suicidal thoughts and behaviors. So an increase of 2%, from 2 to 4, that was attributed to the medication. And it's important to point out also there were actually no suicides. There were no completed suicides in those studies, but a lot of suicidal thoughts and attempts. Other studies, using this similar methodology, found that the increase may be just 1%, but nonetheless there is a small increase. Now, large population-based studies where they look at antidepressant use and suicide over time find the opposite, that there is lower rates of suicide when there is an increase in antidepressant use. So what does this mean clinically, and how can this be that antidepressants help with depression, help with suicidal thoughts, or do they cause suicidal thoughts? Well, in some ways it's a little bit of both. By and large, for most patients, antidepressants decrease sadness, decrease depression, decrease hopelessness, decrease suicidal thoughts and behaviors, because they are a consequence of depression. But rarely, as a somewhat rare side effect, there is some risk of increased suicidal thoughts, and we see it occasionally. Rarely, I would say, in my practice. Another number that's often cited is something called number needed to harm. And again, from the studies, number needed to harm was about 140, which is a statistical term, but it means that you have to start 140 kids on antidepressants to be able to attribute one of them, the suicidal thoughts in one of them, to the medication. And that's been consistent with what we see in clinical practice, that it's pretty rare, but we do have to monitor for it. So I hope this clarifies things. Thanks. Leave comments if you have any questions or thoughts about this.